The gunshot echoed through the empty streets of Shoshone, Wyoming Territory, 1875, as Willow Crawford pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the church attic. Her heart pounded against her ribs, each beat a desperate prayer for the life growing inside her swollen belly. 6 months pregnant and on the run, she had nowhere else to go when Father Thomas had ushered her up the narrow stairs 3 days ago, promising sanctuary from the men hunting her. Dust motes danced in the thin shafts of light filtering through the small window as Willow huddled beneath a threadbare blanket. Her fingers traced the swell of her stomach, feeling the gentle kicks of her unborn child. The baby was active tonight, perhaps sensing its mother's fear. She had been hiding since her husband's murder, fleeing from her brother-in-law who blamed her for Edward's death and coveted the deed to their small homestead that now legally belonged to her. The church below had fallen silent after evening prayers. Father Thomas would bring food soon, as he had each night since her arrival. The aging priest was her only ally in Shoshone, a town where she'd arrived just 2 weeks prior, hoping to disappear among the unfamiliar faces. The plan had worked until yesterday when she glimpsed her brother-in-law Vernon outside the general store, his cold eyes scanning the street as if he could sense her presence. A creak on the stairs startled her from her thoughts. Willow reached for the small knife hidden in the folds of her dress, the only protection she had managed to bring in her hasty escape. "Mrs. Crawford," Father Thomas's gentle voice called softly from the stairwell. "I've brought you some stew." Relief washed over her as she tucked the knife away. "Thank you, Father," she whispered as the elderly man appeared at the top of the stairs, a steaming bowl in his weathered hands. The priest's expression was grave as he handed her the food. "There are men asking about you in town. I fear they may come searching the church." Willow's hands trembled, nearly spilling the precious stew. "What should I do?" Her voice cracked with desperation. "I've spoken with Nathan Montgomery," Father Thomas said, settling beside her on an old trunk. "He owns a cattle ranch about 10 miles outside of town. A good man, despite what some folks say about his past. He's willing to offer you shelter." "A stranger's ranch?" Willow asked, uncertain. "Why would he help me?" "Nathan has his own reasons for standing against injustice," Father Thomas said cryptically. "He said, and I quote, 'My ranch is safer than this church attic.' He's not wrong. Vernon and his men wouldn't dare trespass on Montgomery land." Willow spooned a mouthful of stew, buying time to consider her limited options. The baby kicked forcefully, as if offering an opinion of its own. "When would I leave?" she finally asked. "Tonight. Nathan will come after midnight with a wagon." The priest patted her hand reassuringly. "I've known him for many years. You can trust him, child." As promised, well after the town had fallen into slumber, Willow heard the soft approach of wagon wheels outside the church. Father Thomas appeared in the attic, helping her gather the few belongings she'd managed to keep during her flight. "He's here," the priest whispered, guiding her down the narrow staircase. The night air was crisp with approaching autumn as they slipped through the back door of the church. A tall figure stood beside a wagon, his face obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. "Mr. Montgomery." Father Thomas called softly. The man stepped forward, moonlight revealing a weathered face with intelligent eyes and a beard streaked with premature silver despite his apparent youth. Willow guessed him to be no more than 30. "Father," he acknowledged with a nod before his gaze settled on Willow. "Mrs. Crawford." His voice was deep and gentle, contrasting with the hardness around his eyes and the gun holstered at his hip. Willow clutched her small bundle of possessions tighter against her chest. "Thank you for coming, Nathan," Father Thomas said. "Vernon's men checked the saloon tonight. It won't be long before they think to look here." Nathan Montgomery nodded, his expression grim. We need to move quickly then. He turned to Willow, his gaze softening slightly. I've prepared the wagon for your comfort, madam. It's not an easy ride to my ranch, especially in your condition. Willow straightened her shoulders, summoning what dignity she could in her worn dress and swollen state. I've endured worse, Mr. Montgomery. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. I don't doubt that. He offered his hand, helping her into the wagon where he had indeed arranged blankets and pillows to form a makeshift bed. Stay low as we leave town. We can't risk anyone seeing you. Father Thomas blessed them both before Nathan climbed onto the driver's seat. With a soft click of his tongue, the horses pulled forward, the wagon wheels creaking softly as they began the journey away from Shoshone. Willow lay back among the blankets, one hand protectively over her belly as she watched the stars overhead. The gentle rocking of the wagon was almost soothing, though each jolt over the uneven trail sent anxiety coursing through her. She was putting her life and her child's in the hands of a man she'd just met. Are you comfortable enough, Mrs. Crawford? Nathan's voice drifted back to her after they'd cleared the town limits. Yes, thank you, she replied, though in truth, her back ached fiercely. We'll be riding through the night, he explained. My ranch is in a hidden valley. It's safer that way. Father Thomas mentioned you have reasons to stand against injustice, Willow said carefully. May I ask what they are? Nathan was silent for so long that Willow thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, as if choosing each word with care. Let's just say I understand what it means to be hunted unjustly, he said. And I won't stand by while a woman and child suffer the same fate. The wagon hit a particularly deep rut, causing Willow to gasp as pain shot through her lower back. Nathan immediately pulled the horses to a halt. Are you all right? Yes, she managed, breathing deeply until the pain subsided. The baby doesn't appreciate the rough road. He climbed down and approached the back of the wagon, concern evident in his features. We should rest for a moment. The horses could use a break too. Nathan helped her sit up and offered a canteen of cool water. In the moonlight, Willow could see him more clearly. The lines etched around his eyes spoke of hardship, but there was kindness there too. How far along are you? He asked, nodding toward her belly. 6 months, perhaps a little more, she answered, accepting the water gratefully. My husband kept track, but after he... Her voice faltered. Father Thomas told me about your situation, Nathan said quietly. I'm sorry about your husband. Willow looked away, fighting tears. Edward was a good man. He didn't deserve to die over a piece of land. Few men do, Nathan agreed, his voice containing a hint of personal knowledge that made Willow curious about his past. But before she could inquire further, he was checking the horses and preparing to continue their journey. Dawn was breaking when they finally arrived at Nathan Montgomery's ranch. As the wagon crested a rise, Willow caught her first glimpse of the property nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills. A sturdy 2-story house stood flanked by a large barn and several smaller outbuildings. Cattle dotted the distant pastures, and a stream wound through the property like a silver ribbon in the early morning light. Welcome to Whispering Pines Ranch, Nathan said, a note of pride in his voice. Not many people know about this valley. The hills keep it protected from both weather and unwanted visitors. As they approached the house, a middle-aged woman emerged from the front door, wiping her hands on her apron. This is Mrs. Abigail Peterson, Nathan explained. She keeps house for me and is the finest cook in 3 territories. The woman bustled forward as Nathan helped Willow down from the wagon. Land's sakes, you look exhausted, child, she exclaimed, taking Willow's arm supportively. Let's get you inside and settled. I've prepared a room for you upstairs. Willow was too tired to protest as Mrs. Peterson led her into the house and up to a comfortable bedroom with a large bed and windows overlooking the valley. The room was simply but tastefully furnished, with a rocking chair by the window and fresh wildflowers in a vase on the dresser. "Rest now," the housekeeper instructed, helping Willow out of her dusty traveling clothes and into a clean nightgown that somehow fit perfectly over her swollen belly. "We'll talk more when you've had some sleep." Exhaustion overtook Willow as soon as her head touched the pillow. Her last conscious thought was wonder at how quickly her circumstances had changed from hiding in fear to being cared for by strangers who seemed determined to protect her. When she awoke, the sun was high in the sky. For a moment, she felt disoriented, the comfortable bed and clean room so different from the church attic where she'd spent the previous nights. Then memory returned, along with the realization that she was safe, at least for now. A soft knock at the door preceded Mrs. Peterson's entrance. The housekeeper carried a tray laden with food: fresh bread, scrambled eggs, and slices of ham. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Crawford," the woman said cheerfully. "I thought you might be hungry when you woke." "Afternoon." Willow sat up in alarm. "I've slept half the day away." "Which is exactly what you needed," Mrs. Peterson assured her, setting the tray across Willow's lap. "That baby needs rest and nourishment, and so do you." As Willow ate, Mrs. Peterson bustled about the room, opening curtains and laying out fresh clothes. "I hope these fit." "They belonged to Mr. Montgomery's sister when she was in a family way." "Mr. Montgomery has a sister?" Willow asked between bites of the delicious food. "Had," Mrs. Peterson corrected gently. "Sarah passed on 5 years ago in childbirth, along with the babe. Nearly destroyed Nathan. That's why he didn't hesitate when Father Thomas told him about your situation." Willow lowered her fork, appetite suddenly diminished. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Nathan's had his share of sorrows," Mrs. Peterson acknowledged. "Lost his wife Eliza before that to fever. But he keeps going, building this ranch from nothing. Strong man, inside and out." After eating and dressing in the borrowed clothes, a simple blue cotton dress with enough room for her growing belly, Willow ventured downstairs. The house was comfortably furnished, with practical, well-made furniture and a few touches of refinement that suggested Nathan Montgomery was a man of some education and taste. She found him on the front porch, whittling a piece of wood with a small knife. He stood immediately when he saw her. "Mrs. Crawford, I hope you rested well." "Very well, thank you," she replied, "and please call me Willow." A slight smile lifted the corner of his mouth. "Willow, then, and I'm Nathan to my friends." "Are we friends, Mr. Montgomery?" she asked cautiously. "I'd like to think we're headed in that direction," he replied, gesturing to a chair beside his own. "Would you care to sit? The view of the valley is particularly fine this time of day." Willow settled into the offered chair, grateful to be off her feet. Her back had been troubling her since the wagon ride. "How long do you think I can stay here?" she asked after they had sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, Nathan's hand stilled on the piece of wood he was carving. "As long as necessary," he said firmly. "This ranch is remote enough that Vernon Crawford won't find you easily, if at all. But what if he does?" Willow couldn't keep the fear from her voice. "I can't put you and Mrs. Peterson in danger." "My ranch, my rules," Nathan said simply. "Vernon Crawford may think he has influence in Shoshone, but out here, he's just another man who'd be wise to think twice before causing trouble." Something in his tone made Willow glance at him sharply. "You know him." "I know of him," Nathan corrected. "Our paths crossed briefly in Cheyenne a few years back. He was attempting to swindle a widow out of her property. I intervened." "That sounds like Vernon," Willow sighed. "He was always jealous that Edward inherited the family land. When Edward and I married, it only made things worse. And now he thinks with Edward gone, he can take what rightfully belongs to you and your child," Nathan concluded, his expression hardening. "He said he'd see me hang for murdering his brother before he'd let me keep the land," Willow admitted, her voice breaking. "But I didn't kill Edward. We were happy. The baby was a blessing we'd prayed for." "What happened to your husband?" Nathan asked gently. Willow's hands trembled in her lap as she relived the terrible memory. "We were repairing the roof of our cabin. Edward fell. He was alive when I reached him, but his injuries—" She swallowed hard. "He made me promise to protect the baby and the land. It was the last thing he said before he died in my arms." "And Vernon claimed you pushed him," Nathan guessed. Willow nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He arrived just after Edward died. Took one look at the situation and accused me of murder. Said I wanted the land for myself. He went into town to fetch the sheriff, and I ran. I knew no one would believe me over a Crawford in that town." Nathan reached over and covered her hand with his own. His palm was rough with calluses but warm and reassuring. "I believe you, Willow." For the first time since Edward's death, Willow felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps here, on this remote ranch with this quiet, strong man, she and her baby might find more than just temporary shelter. The days that followed fell into a peaceful rhythm. Willow spent her mornings helping Mrs. Peterson with household tasks that didn't strain her condition, her afternoons resting or sitting on the porch with mending or other light work. Her evenings were often spent in the company of Nathan, who would return from his duties around the ranch to join her for dinner and conversation afterward. She learned that Nathan had come west after the war, where he'd served as a Union captain. He'd built his ranch from nothing over the past decade, choosing the hidden valley specifically for its isolation after the tragedies in his life had left him wary of town life. "Most folks in Shoshone know me only as the reclusive rancher who comes to town for supplies once a month," he explained one evening as they sat before the fire. "They respect my privacy, which suits me fine. Don't you get lonely out here?" Willow asked, her hands busy with the baby blanket she was knitting. Nathan's gaze lingered on her hands. "I have Mrs. Peterson, a few loyal ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, good horses and cattle for company." A small smile touched his lips. "And now I have you telling me I'm too solitary." Willow felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "I didn't mean to criticize." "You didn't," he assured her. "It's a fair question, and yes, sometimes the silence is too much, but it's better than the alternative." "Which is?" "Living among people who see only what they want to see," he said quietly. "When Eliza died, the rumors started that I'd worked her too hard, that I was responsible. When Sarah died in childbirth while visiting me, they whispered I was cursed, dangerous to those I loved." Willow's heart ached for him. People can be cruel when they don't understand. "Yes," he agreed, his eyes meeting hers across the room. "They certainly can be." As her pregnancy advanced, Willow found herself increasingly dependent on Nathan's strength and Mrs. Peterson's practical knowledge. Her 7th month brought swollen ankles and backaches that made even simple tasks challenging. One afternoon, while attempting to reach a book on a high shelf, Willow lost her balance. She would have fallen if Nathan hadn't appeared suddenly in the doorway, crossing the room in 3 long strides to catch her. "Easy," he murmured, his arms strong around her. "What do you need? I'll get it for you." Willow was acutely aware of his closeness, of the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. "The blue book," she managed to say. "I wanted something to read." He reached easily for the volume but didn't immediately release her. For a long moment they stood together, his arm still supportive around her waist. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up to find his eyes intent on her face. "You should be more careful," he said, his voice rougher than usual. The baby is fine, she assured him, guided his hand to her belly where the child was kicking vigorously. Feel, strong as a horse. Nathan's expression transformed as he felt the movement beneath his palm. Wonder replaced concern, and something else, a yearning so profound it made Willow's heart constrict. A miracle, he said softly. Yes, she agreed, covering his hand with her own. A miracle. The moment was broken by Mrs. Peterson calling from the kitchen that dinner was ready. Nathan stepped back, clearing his throat. We should go eat, he said, offering his arm with formal politeness that didn't quite mask the emotion still evident in his eyes. That night, lying in bed, Willow acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling in love with Nathan Montgomery. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. Edward had been gone less than 6 months. Her heart still ached for him, for the future they'd planned together. Yet here was this unexpected new feeling, sprouting like a spring flower through winter snow. Was it disloyal to feel this way? Or was it simply life asserting itself, pushing forward as it always must? Willow placed both hands on her rounded belly, feeling the baby shift beneath her touch. What would your father think? She whispered to her unborn child. Would he understand that my heart has room for new love without diminishing what we shared? The baby kicked in response, and Willow chose to take it as approval. Still, she resolved to guard her heart carefully. Nathan had shown no clear indication that he returned her feelings, and her situation remained precarious. Vernon was still hunting her, and her child's future was far from secure. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. One of Nathan's ranch hands rode in with news that strangers had been asking about Nathan in town, specifically whether he had a pregnant woman staying at his ranch. Vernon, Willow gasped when Nathan told her. He's found me. Not yet, Nathan said grimly, but he's getting closer. Jim says they were told nothing in town, but it's only a matter of time before someone talks or they start searching the outlying properties. Fear clutched at Willow's heart. What should we do? Nathan's expression was resolute. Nothing changes. You stay here where I can protect you. I'll increase patrols around the property boundaries. But your ranch, your people, I'm putting everyone in danger, Willow protested. This is my choice, Nathan said firmly. I won't let Vernon Crawford terrorize you or threaten your child, Mrs. Peterson, who had been listening silently, nodded in agreement. Nathan's right, child. This ranch has withstood worse than the likes of Vernon Crawford. Despite their reassurances, Willow's anxiety grew in the days that followed. She found herself jumping at every unusual sound, peering nervously out windows and sleeping fitfully. The baby, sensing her distress, became more active, sometimes keeping her awake through the night with powerful movements. Nathan noticed her fatigue and worry. One evening after Mrs. Peterson had retired for the night, he sat beside Willow on the porch swing where she'd been trying to find peace in the cool night air. You need to rest, he said gently. This stress isn't good for you or the baby. How can I rest knowing Vernon could appear at any moment? She asked, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. You trust me, Willow? Nathan's question was direct, his eyes serious in the lantern light. Yes, she answered without hesitation, surprising herself with the certainty of her response. Then believe me when I tell you that I will not let any harm come to you or your child. He took her hand, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. Not while I have breath in my body. The fierce protectiveness in his voice brought tears to her eyes. Why? She whispered. Why risk so much for me? Nathan was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to their joined hands. When he spoke, his voice was low and uncertain, as if he was confessing something he'd barely admitted to himself. "Because in the short time you've been here, you've brought life back to this house. To me." He met her eyes again, vulnerability evident in his expression. "I know your heart still belongs to Edward, and that's as it should be. But I need you to know that whatever happens, my protection doesn't come with expectations. It's freely given." Willow felt a rush of emotion so powerful it momentarily stole her breath. Without thinking, she reached up to touch his face, her fingers light against his bearded cheek. "Edward will always be part of me," she said softly. "He's the father of my child, but my heart—" She took a deep breath. "My heart is capable of new love, Nathan. I didn't expect it, didn't look for it, but here it is all the same." His eyes widened, hope warring with disbelief. "Willow, you don't have to, I'm not," she interrupted. "I'm simply telling you the truth. These feelings frightened me at first. They seemed too soon, too unexpected. But life is short and uncertain. Edward taught me that, and I won't deny what my heart is telling me now." Nathan's hand came up to cover hers where it rested against his face. "And what is your heart telling you?" "That I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. "That against all odds and sense, in the midst of danger and uncertainty, I've found something I never thought to find again." For a breathless moment, Nathan simply stared at her, as if searching for any sign of doubt or obligation in her confession. Finding none, he leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away before his lips met hers in a kiss of exquisite tenderness. Willow felt the kiss through every part of her being, a sweet affirmation of life and possibility. When they parted, Nathan rested his forehead against hers, his breath unsteady. "I've been fighting these feelings," he admitted. "Telling myself it was wrong to care for you this way when you're vulnerable, when your heart must still be grieving." "Perhaps that's why it happened," Willow suggested. "Because neither of us was looking for love, we were free to recognize it when it appeared." The baby chose that moment to kick forcefully, causing Willow to gasp and place a hand on her belly. Nathan's hand joined hers, and they shared a smile as the child made its presence known. "I think someone is offering an opinion," Nathan said with a soft laugh. "A favorable one, I hope," Willow replied, leaning her head against his shoulder as a sense of peace settled over her despite the dangers still lurking beyond the ranch's boundaries. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. Though propriety was maintained, Willow kept to her room, and Nathan to his. There was a new openness between them, a shared acknowledgement of the feelings growing stronger each day. Mrs. Peterson noticed the change immediately, a knowing smile appearing whenever she saw them together. "About time," Willow overheard her mutter one morning as Nathan helped Willow into her chair at breakfast, his hand lingering on her shoulder longer than strictly necessary. As Willow entered her 8th month, preparations for the baby's arrival intensified. Mrs. Peterson produced a cradle from the attic, the one that had been made for Nathan's sister's child, and Nathan set about restoring it, sanding the wood smooth and applying fresh varnish. Willow finished the baby blanket she'd been knitting and began work on tiny garments, her needle flying as the time grew closer. Nathan sent one of his most trusted men to Laramie to fetch a doctor who owed him a favor, arranging for the physician to stay in a line cabin on the property during the last weeks of Willow's pregnancy. Every possible preparation was made for a safe delivery. But Vernon Crawford had not given up his search. Reports continued to come from town of strangers asking questions, offering money for information about Nathan Montgomery and any visitors to his ranch. The net was drawing tighter. One crisp October morning, as frost outlined the fallen leaves in the yard, the warning they'd been dreading finally came. One of the ranch hands galloped in, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Mr. Montgomery," he called, dismounting before the horse had fully stopped. Riders coming, at least 6 men armed. They're following the main trail to the valley. Nathan, who had been chopping wood, immediately dropped his axe. How far out? Maybe an hour, way they're moving, the young cowboy reported. Nathan's expression hardened. Get back to your post. Tell the others to prepare, but no one fires unless I give the order. We don't know for certain it's Crawford. As the ranch hand rode off, Nathan strode to where Willow stood frozen on the porch, one hand braced against a post for support. It's him, she said, fear evident in her pale face. Vernon's found me. We don't know that for certain, Nathan said, though his tone lacked conviction, but we'll prepare as if it is. Mrs. Peterson, he called, and the housekeeper appeared immediately from inside. I heard, she said grimly. What's your plan? Get Willow to the root cellar. It's the most defensible spot if things go wrong. He turned back to Willow, taking her hands in his. I don't want to frighten you, but I need you to be ready for anything. Willow straightened, gathering her courage. What are you going to do? Meet them before they reach the main house, Nathan said. With luck, I can send them on their way without trouble. And if you can't? Willow couldn't keep her voice from trembling. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then I'll do whatever is necessary to protect what's mine. The possessive declaration hung in the air between them, his eyes holding hers with fierce intensity. Mrs. Peterson interrupted the moment, practical as always. Let's get you settled in the root cellar, Mrs. Crawford. I've already put fresh blankets down there and some water. As the housekeeper led her toward the sturdy underground storage area behind the house, Willow looked back at Nathan, who was now checking his rifle with practiced efficiency. Nathan, she called, causing him to look up. There were so many things she wanted to say, needed to say in case this was the last time she saw him. But in the end, only 3 words would do. I love you. A smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines of preparation for violence. And I love you, Willow Crawford. Remember that, no matter what happens today. The root cellar was cool and dim, smelling of earth and the vegetables stored there for winter. Mrs. Peterson settled Willow on a makeshift bed of blankets in the corner farthest from the door, then took up position on a stool near the entrance, a shotgun across her lap. You know how to use that? Willow asked, somewhat incredulous at the sight of the normally gentle housekeeper, armed and vigilant. My husband was a buffalo hunter before the consumption took him, Mrs. Peterson replied matter-of-factly. I can handle a gun as well as most men. Time passed with excruciating slowness. Willow could hear muffled sounds from above men's voices, horses snorting, the occasional footstep on the wooden porch. The baby moved restlessly within her, responding to her tension with increased activity. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a gunshot broke the relative quiet. Willow gasped, her hands flying to her belly protectively. Mrs. Peterson's grip tightened on the shotgun, her expression grim. Stay calm, the older woman advised. Nathan knows what he's doing. More gunshots followed, along with shouted words that Willow couldn't make out through the thick cellar door. She closed her eyes, praying for Nathan's safety, for the lives of the ranch hands who were risking themselves on her behalf. A particularly loud volley of shots was followed by silence. Willow and Mrs. Peterson exchanged anxious glances, straining to hear any clue about what was happening outside. Footsteps approached the cellar door. Mrs. Peterson raised the shotgun, aiming steadily at the entrance. Abigail? Willow? It's me, Nathan's voice called, bringing a flood of relief. It's over. Mrs. Peterson lowered the gun and moved to unbolt the door. When it swung open, Nathan stood there, a bloodied bandage wrapped hastily around his left arm but otherwise unharmed. Vernon? Willow asked immediately. Wounded, not killed, Nathan said, helping her to her feet. He'll stand trial for attempted murder once he recovers. The sheriff from Laramie was with them. Seems Vernon had convinced him you were a fugitive. When he heard our side of the story and saw Vernon's willingness to shoot his way onto private property, he changed his mind about who the criminal was. Willow sagged against him, overcome with relief. Is anyone else hurt? Nothing serious, Nathan assured her. Jim took a bullet graze to the leg, but the doctor's tending to him now. As they emerged from the cellar into the late afternoon sunlight, Willow saw several horses tied at the hitching post, and a wagon where a man lay, presumably Vernon. A official-looking man in a worn suit was speaking with one of Nathan's ranch hands while two others stood guard over Vernon, and what appeared to be his hired guns, now disarmed and sitting sullenly under a tree. The sheriff approached as Nathan led Willow toward the house, his shrewd eyes taking in her advanced pregnancy and the protective way Nathan kept his good arm around her waist. "Mrs. Crawford," he said, removing his hat, "I owe you an apology. Vernon Crawford spun quite a tale about you murdering your husband and stealing family property." "It's not stealing when it's legally mine," Willow replied, finding strength in Nathan's supportive presence. "Edward left everything to me and our child in his will." "So Mr. Montgomery explained," the sheriff nodded. "And the witnesses who have come forward since you left town confirm your account of your husband's accident. Vernon will face charges for filing false reports and attempted murder, among other things." Relief washed over Willow so powerfully that her knees nearly buckled. "It's over then, truly over." "It is," the sheriff confirmed. "Though I'll need you to come to Laramie at some point to make an official statement. After the baby comes, of course," he added hastily, noting her condition. "Thank you, Sheriff," Nathan said, extending his hand, which the lawman shook firmly. "We appreciate your understanding of the situation." After the sheriff and his prisoners departed, taking Vernon and his men to face justice in Laramie, a celebratory mood overtook the ranch. The doctor tended to the minor injuries sustained during the confrontation, then pronounced that all would heal well with proper care. That evening, with the immediate danger past, Nathan found Willow sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of gold and crimson. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling beside her, his bandaged arm resting carefully against his chest, relieved, grateful. She turned to him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Overwhelmed by all you've done for me." Nathan shook his head. "I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." He took her hand, his expression growing serious. "Willow, I know this might seem sudden, or perhaps even inappropriate given all that's happened today, but I can't wait any longer to ask." Her heart quickened as he slid from the swing to one knee before her, still holding her hand in his. "I love you," he said simply. "I love the strength that brought you to my door, the courage you've shown every day since, and the gentleness that's transformed this house into a home again. I love the child you carry as if it were my own. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears spilled down Willow's cheeks as joy bloomed in her heart. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Nathan Montgomery, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he leaned forward to seal their engagement with a tender kiss, his hand coming to rest gently on her belly where their future kicked approvingly. 2 weeks later, in the small church in Shoshone where Willow had once hidden in fear, she and Nathan exchanged vows before Father Thomas and a small gathering of friends. Mrs. Peterson stood as Willow's witness, beaming with satisfaction at the union she had quietly encouraged from the beginning. As Nathan slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Willow marveled at how drastically her life had changed in just a few months. From desperate flight to newfound love, from solitary fear to the promise of family. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Father Thomas declared, his kind eyes twinkling with pleasure. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Nathan's kiss was both gentle and possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face the small congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery, Willow felt her baby move vigorously, as if joining in the celebration. Their wedding night was spent in the master bedroom of the ranch house, now redecorated to reflect both their tastes. Despite her advanced pregnancy, their union was tender and passionate, a loving affirmation of the bond that had grown between them through danger and uncertainty. Afterward, as they lay together in the moonlight filtering through the curtains, Nathan's hand resting protectively over her rounded belly, Willow felt a profound sense of peace. "You ever think about how strangely our paths crossed?" she asked softly. "If I hadn't been hiding in that church attic, if I hadn't overheard Father Thomas's concerns about you at precisely the right moment," Nathan added, "if you hadn't said those words that convinced me to trust you," Willow continued. Nathan smiled, remembering. "My ranch is safer," he quoted himself. Little did I know I was inviting my future into my home with those simple words. "Do you regret it?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "Not for a single moment," he assured her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Every choice that led us here was the right one, even the painful ones." Just before dawn on a snowy December morning, Willow gave birth to a healthy son. Nathan paced anxiously outside the bedroom door throughout her labor, deaf to Mrs. Peterson's assurances and the doctor's occasional updates. When the baby's first cry rang out, he nearly broke down the door in his haste to be with his wife. The sight that greeted him stole his breath. Willow, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny red-faced bundle against her breast. She looked up as he entered, her smile tremulous with joy and fatigue. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Nathan approached the bed on unsteady legs, overwhelmed by the surge of love he felt for this woman and the child she held. Carefully, reverently, he sat beside them, one finger gently touching the baby's impossibly small hand. "He's perfect," he whispered, voice rough with emotion, "just like his mother." "I want to name him Edward Nathan," Willow said, watching his face carefully for his reaction, "to honor his father by birth and the father who will raise him." Nathan's eyes filled with tears. "I would be honored," he managed, leaning forward to kiss her forehead, then the baby's. "And I promise you both that I will spend my life being worthy of that honor." The years that followed brought challenges, as all lives do, but also immeasurable joy. Edward Nathan Montgomery, known as Ned, grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's gentle spirit and his adoptive father's steady determination. When he was 2, he welcomed a baby sister, Sarah Abigail, named for Nathan's sister and the loyal housekeeper who had become like family. 2 years after Sarah came twins, William Thomas and James Henry, completing their family and filling Whispering Pines Ranch with the laughter and energy of children, something Nathan had once believed would never be his to enjoy. Willow thrived as both mother and rancher's wife, eventually taking over the ranch accounts with a natural skill for figures that impressed even the banker in Laramie. Under their joint stewardship, Whispering Pines expanded, becoming one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory. Vernon Crawford served 5 years in prison for his crimes before being released. Rather than returning to Wyoming, he sold his remaining property and moved east, never troubling the Montgomery family again. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Nathan surprised Willow with a special gift, the deed to her original homestead, which he had quietly purchased when it came up for sale. "I thought perhaps Ned might want it someday," he explained as she examined the document with wonder. "Or we could simply hold it in trust for all our children." Either way, it rightfully belongs to your family now." Willow set the deed aside and wrapped her arms around her husband's neck. "You are my family, Nathan Montgomery. You and our children. The land is just land, it's the people who matter." "Even so," he said, holding her close. "It's part of your history, part of what brought you to me. I couldn't let it go to strangers." That night, as they sat on the porch of the home they had built together, both the physical structure and the loving family, it contained, Willow reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "You remember what Father Thomas told me about you when he first suggested I come here?" she asked, her head resting comfortably on Nathan's shoulder as they watched their children playing in the twilight. "That I was a good man despite rumors about my past," Nathan guessed, his arm secure around her waist. "That, yes," Willow agreed. "But also that you had your own reasons for standing against injustice. I've always wondered what he meant." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze following Ned as the boy showed his younger siblings how to catch fireflies in the gathering dusk. "Before I came west," he finally said, "I was a lawyer in Pennsylvania. I defended a man accused of killing his wife, a man everyone in town had already decided was guilty. I believed in his innocence and proved it, but not before public opinion turned violently against both him and me. The real murderer had friends in high places, you see." His voice grew distant with memory. "When they couldn't intimidate me into dropping the case, they burned my office. Later, after I'd won the man's freedom, my wife Eliza fell mysteriously ill. The doctor couldn't explain it." "You think she was poisoned?" Willow asked, horrified. "I've always wondered," Nathan admitted. "There was no proof. But afterward, I couldn't stay there. I came west, tried to leave the past behind, but I never forgot what it felt like to be judged and condemned without a fair hearing. When Father Thomas told me about your situation, you saw yourself in me," Willow finished for him. "I saw someone who deserved justice and protection," he corrected gently. "And now I thank God every day that I listened to that instinct." Willow turned in his arms, studying the beloved face that had grown only more dear to her over their years together. The silver in his beard had spread to his temples, and lines of laughter had joined those of care around his eyes, but to her, he was as handsome as the day he'd helped her from that wagon into her new life. "I love you, Nathan Montgomery," she said simply. "Every day, more than the day before." His smile was the same one that had first given her hope in the darkest days of her life, strong, certain, and filled with promise. "And I love you, Willow Montgomery," he replied, drawing her closer for a kiss that held all the tenderness of their first and all the depth of their shared years. "From the moment you brought life back to this valley, and to me." As their children's laughter floated up from the yard and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Willow reflected that sometimes the greatest journeys begin in the unlikeliest places, even in the dusty attic of a church, where a frightened woman once hid, waiting for sanctuary. She had found that sanctuary and so much more, with the cowboy who had offered her safety and given her a lifetime of love.